All right, everyone, who's hungry? Today I'm recapping Appetite for Love. Yum! Hey guys, if you're new here, my name is Alanna and I love hate Hallmark. I have watched hundreds of Hallmarks and I can't stop. And I love them because they're so absolutely ridiculous. And today I'm gonna retell a very ridiculous story. So buckle up. Let me scooch over. As with literally every Hallmark I've ever watched, we start off with some royalty-free music and some B-roll of some city. Any city, doesn't matter. Just make it royalty free, we're on a budget. And as with all my Hallmark recaps, the female protagonists are Hallmark girl. I never remember their names, and quite honestly, because they don't matter. So as with every review or recap or whatever you want to call this, I simply call them our girl. She's our girl. And we meet our girl all suited up, looking very stylish, looking very corporate. She's on the phone using corporate lingo and she's getting some coffees. And she arrives to her morning meeting late with a takeaway coffee. Just those girly things. And respectfully, this woman is gorgeous. She looks kind of scary, like she would make fun of you in high school, but also like absolutely beautiful. Makeup on point. Anyway, we also learned that her coworker slash boyfriend, Reed, is sitting beside her. He has a really upsetting jaw. Just put a pin in that for later. Now, after the meeting, she gets called into the boss's office and he basically lays out our plot for us. So basically, this corporation, we're largely just gonna refer to them as corporate, as like, you know, the big evil business. They have bought a bunch of these chain restaurants and they're going to rebrand them all with like new menus and signage and logos and all that stuff. And we learned that there are 6 restaurants across 2 states and our girl is gonna be tasked with managing them or like this new project. Hashtag girl boss. Love to see it. But wait, there's one of the restaurants that is not compliant. They're not responding to emails or calls. They are not happy. So she is going to be tasked with going to this particular restaurant to kind of like whip them into shape.
I almost forgot. What is the brand?
Hearts.
And the problem store?
Some flyover town in Tennessee.
Yes, that was shade, in case you were asking. And we're going to Sycamore Springs. Our girl knows it because, spoiler alert, she's from there. How embarrassing. As a side note, out of the 5 movies I've done on Talking Hallmark so far, 2 of them, this is the second one, has Springs in the place name. How creative. We get some exposition between our girl and the corporate receptionist, basically talking about how like our girl hasn't been home in 15 years.
And your parents still live there? No, they moved to Florida. Oh, match. But my crazy Aunt Tolly still lives there, married to her Art. And I sort of know the owner of the restaurant.
That's good, right?
No. He's the father of the guy I used to date in high school.
Yikes. And now it's super awkward because he dumped you?
No, I broke up with him when I finally got out of that place.
How'd he take it?
Not well.
Let's just get all of that important information out at once.
I mean, what was I supposed to do? Stay in Sycamore Springs for the rest of my life when my high school boyfriend's goals were fishing and drinking beer? And I made it very clear that I wanted more out of my life. And just because he chose to stay in that sleepy cow town doesn't mean that I have to throw away the rest of my life.
And to be fair, yes, you can dream big and leave your hometown and explore what the world has to offer. That's life, baby. There's so much of it out there. But no, in the Hallmark cinematic universe, this is the wrong choice and you will be punished. Anyway, back to our girl and the receptionist who you just know loves to gossip. She's got a face about her of a gossiper, do you know what I mean? And they're mentioning like a throwaway line that our girl is gonna be late for a very fancy dinner with Reed, the boyfriend with the crazy jaw. And they are speculating that Reed is going to propose. How exciting. I'm gonna mention this a couple of times throughout this recap. This man's jaw is stupid. But surprise, at the fancy dinner, Reed does not propose. He in fact reveals that he bought them a condo so they can move in together finally. But in the Hallmark cinematic universe, living in sin is a no-no.
But a bigger part of me always imagined I'd be married first.
Respectfully, honey, you're like 37. What are we doing? She basically tells him that she wants to wait until she's done this out-of-town trip. When she's done with Hearts and she comes back to the city, then they can talk about it. There's a lot on her plate right now. Which honestly, hell yeah, let's set some boundaries. We cut to our girl trying to find a decent radio station in the country.
T-shirts and blue jeans instead of them suits. You ever wonder where you rode in?
What? And honestly, her trying to get the cows out of the road is a vibe.
Oh, come on, my Frank Hills. Hey guys. Hey. Really? Today? Shoot. Take your friends. Get along. Giddy up. Go. Oh, look what I got here. Yeah. Uh-huh. Right this way. Yeah. Okay. One down. Who's next?
Then a cowboy shows up and he very easily and casually moves the cows out of the road, and surprise, the cowboy is her high school boyfriend Clay, who's now a man, and everything's very awkward. And also, small head, real small head. I don't know, his head just, he's got a small head. She finally arrives at the local inn and finds out that all of the rooms are booked. Yes. In this flyover town. Why are they all booked, you might ask? Because there is the Sweetheart Festival this weekend. Obviously. So people are traveling out of town to come to this middle of nowhere place to stay at an inn to go to the Sweetheart Festival. Yes, this is what's happening. And like Jesus, when the inn was full, our girl leaves to sleep in a barn. Just kidding. She goes to her aunt's because remember, we know her aunt still lives in Sycamore Springs. And within like the first 5 seconds of meeting this character, you just know this aunt will be hilarious and a little bit racist.
But I'm gonna get you something to eat because you look skinnier than a poor man's wallet.
You can't say that anymore because of woke. That's a joke. I love that as a joke. That is not my personal feelings. Okay, that's a joke. Also, side note, we absolutely see her step in a pile of cow shit when she's trying to get the cows off the road, right? And then literally the next scene, she's standing in her aunt's kitchen with her shitty boots on. Anywho, she retires to the guest bedroom in these very cute matching PJs, and she's looking at these photos on a wall, like reminiscing. And she takes it off the wall. Like, girl, you don't have to do that. And actually, you shouldn't. But then we get a shot as to why she has to take it off the wall, because on the back of the picture is a little note saying that it was her and Clay, the ex-boyfriend that we met earlier, when they were young. That's good writing. The next day she arrives at the restaurant, Hearts that she's supposed to be updating, you know, she's supposed to be changing it to align with the corporate stuff. And I just gotta say, she looks fab. I know they're trying to make her look severe and like city girl, but I think she looks incredible. Anyway, she asks for Mr. Hart. And he's not there, so while she's waiting, she tries to order one of the menu items off of the new corporate menu, like the one that they're supposed to be using. And the like server and the chef don't know what she's talking about, and they make fun of her. I love small towns. And finally, Mr. Hart arrives at the restaurant, and surprise, it's Clay. And she's like, no, I mean, like your dad, I'm dealing with your father, the owner of this restaurant, and double surprise, the dad is dead. R.I.P. So Mr. Hart, like the father Hart, has died, and Clay is now the owner of this restaurant. So Clay's gonna be the one that she's dealing with. Are you with me so far?
Is no one reading the company emails or checking voice messages?
I'm more of an old school facts kind of guy.
I'm more of an old school facts guy. Literally no one is a facts guy. This film is from 2016. We get a bit more exposition from her, basically explaining you have to do these changes. Like Hearts has to adapt to the corporate policy. It's very serious, just in case you didn't understand.
Well, as you know, Hearts was recently purchased by international corporate brands, and
I'm not sure if I agree with that decision, but nothing I can do about it now, right?
I work for ICB. They sent me here to make sure to talk you through some rebranding changes.
Well, what do you know? Little Willie Mae is now a bigwig.
What a lovely man. Hallmark historically loves the idea and like the mindset that small towns are the place to be. City, big city, bad. Small towns, great. Honestly, this town sucks.
Willie Jones? Hi, Paisley. What are you doing back in Sycamore Springs? Are you here to open a bank or a men's clothing store or something?
Anyway, we find out that this bitch is now dating Clay, the ex-high school boyfriend. And she thinks the only reason our girl is in town is because they are now dating. Again, I repeat, y'all are 37. We are simply too old for this. I'm Canadian, but our small towns are basically the same. If you've ever lived in one, you know. You just know. Also, while you're here, if you've made it to this part in the video, what is your favorite Hallmark trope? Me personally is when big city girl goes back to country small town living to leave her corporate job to essentially be a mom. That's my personal favorite. But leave a comment down below, what's yours? Back at the restaurant, our girl is ready to get started, but no, the restaurant is closing. Clay says there's like a town hall thing happening in the restaurant that night, and he is off to coach kids basketball. And again, she's trying to explain to him how serious this is. If he doesn't go along with these corporate changes, he could be fired. And we get the most intense close-up of a man in a basketball jersey I have ever seen. We cut to Clay in a bar drinking his troubles away, which is really all that you do in a small town. And we get a throwaway line from him that he is actually not dating that bitchy lady they broke up last week. If you even care. Basically, he's just complaining like he's afraid Hearts is gonna turn into something soulless like everything else. And apparently it was the father who made this deal and sold the restaurant and not him, and blah, blah, blah. Nobody really cares. The next day, our girl gives a presentation at the restaurant and Clay is noticeably not there because he is a big crybaby. I just love a man, an adult man who solves his issues like a mature adult. Anyway, the menu and the rebranding kind of sounds like Denny's. If you've ever been to Denny's. But the big issue, and this comes up throughout the rest of the movie, is that as part of this restructure, corporate is going to provide them with food vendors, which is basically they're going to be sending frozen food to Hearts that they have to cook with, instead of like the organic local stuff that they have been using. After the meeting that he missed, our girl finds Clay fishing and we get a little bit of a plot twist. So apparently Clay's father, so when he died, Clay inherited the restaurant. So when the father sold the stuff to corporate, they only really bought the Hart name and Clay still owns the business. I don't think any of this is legal. Anyway, Clay is still mad.
So let me get this straight. You want to turn a small farm-to-table family business into a factory? A factory that serves prepackaged frozen food disguised as old-fashioned home cooking?
Which, fair. But we also learned that Hearts has been losing money for however long, so they're gonna close even if they don't do anything. Honestly, let's just get Gordon Ramsay up in there and fix that shit and call it a day. Back at the restaurant, the staff are complaining that they don't want to cook with frozen food. They like their old suppliers, the local farmers and whatever. And then we get this like weirdly horny scene where Clay makes our girl eat an organic apple and tell him how she feels. Okay, hun, sure. Clay gets called back inside because a woman who I call Old Karen, I don't know her name and it doesn't matter. Old Karen is upset and she's leaving. Now, just let me explain. Tell me your thoughts. There's this old lady who comes into Hearts and orders a particular meal that is not on the menu. Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. She comes into the restaurant to order something that is not on the menu and they just make it for her. Can you imagine? And so now that they are no longer doing that for her because they have this new corporate menu and they have to stick to the menu, she is super upset and she says this really shitty thing to Clay and walks out. I cannot imagine even going to a local cafe, local to me, and making them provide a meal to me that's not on the menu. That's insane behavior. Next up, our new uniforms that everybody hates, and we learned that tomorrow the Sweetheart Festival thing starts. And so our girl is like, great, we're gonna use the festival to like promote and launch the new Hearts with like the new menu and the new food, which basically just ends up being really sad looking chicken strips served in a high school gym. But our girl does try to promote Heart's new social media.
Here you go, hashtag loving hearts. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, Yik Yak, and Snapchat.
Snapchat? The only people on Snapchat are children and pedophiles. I will die on this hill. And if you are on Snapchat and you are not a child or a pedophile, I think you need to take a good hard look at yourself. After some mindless chatter, Clay says that if our girl wins the race or some festival race or whatever, if the girl wins, he is going to give the restaurant to corporate or like sell it to corporate, whatever. And we learn in the next scene that this is the stuff your face race sponsored by Hearts.
Now each contestant has to complete the course through the springs and get back here by any means necessary. But you must stop at every station and finish eating each portion of food or be disqualified.
Nothing gets me in the mood for running like a shit ton of food. And finally, during this race where they're forced to eat, like each station is Hearts food, our girl realizes that Heart's frozen food sucks. The new corporate providers, the frozen food, just, it's bad. And everyone in the race realizes that it's bad too. And spoiler alert, she loses. Back at the restaurant, nobody's coming anymore because everyone's realized the new food is shit. So our girl kind of concedes a little bit and she's like, okay, as long as we use the branding and the menu, we'll go back to using the fresh local food as like a compromise. And that old Karen grandma is happy.
I love it!
She gives me the vibe like if she's unhappy, nobody's happy. But she's happy now, so everything's okay. Who would like some character development? So we see Clay dig up a time capsule that him and our girl did when they were kids, and it's actually very cute. I will admit, this is very sweet. And here we get some increasingly zoomed in shots.
You remember we used to go crazy.
Cranberries. Waterfalls.
Next, they have a bonfire and they're looking at each other very longingly. I will say the chemistry in this, pretty good. I've certainly seen worse. And they're like dissecting their high school romance. Like, why did we break up? Like, why did you go away? Blah, blah, blah. But we get a kiss. This is so rare in the Hallmark cinematic universe. The HCU. Normally we only get one kiss at the very end, but today's your lucky day, we get an early kiss. But she's upset by it and she wants to go home, and then things are just kind of like awkward between them. Because they're literally 37-year-old adults. And then Reed shows up. Surprise! Did you forget about him and his stupid jaw? Because I wish I could. Anyway, he shows up at the restaurant and he proposes to her in front of everyone. Hot tip, don't do this. Anyway, she runs out. Ouch. Eventually she comes back and she talks with him and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm just really stressed out right now and I don't want to make a big decision when I've got so much going on. So I'm just gonna I need to finish this job. It's way more difficult than I thought it was gonna be, and then we can discuss this. And he actually says that he's gonna stay in Sycamore Springs to support her while she's here, which is actually very nice. Yes, we still have 30 minutes left of this movie. Plot twist. Kind of, if you can call it that. We learned that Reed isn't necessarily staying in Sycamore Springs to support our girl. He's on the phone and it's clear he's doing something sneaky, like he's working on fixing Hearts, like in a backstabby kind of way. We don't really know what he's doing, but we know he's doing something bad. And we also get loads of shitty comments from him to reinforce the idea that yes, he is the asshole.
Speaking of bad, fashion in this town is dubious at best.
Just in case you weren't sure who you should be rooting for, it's finally the day everyone's been waiting for. The sweetheart dance on Valentine's Day. Reed makes it really clear that he does not want to go to this, but our girl does, so he's like, okay, because you want to go, I'll go. And then literally in the next scene, she's at the dance, she's all dressed up in her Hallmark appropriate dress, and she gets a text from Reed basically saying, oh, sorry, I can't go. Love that. Eventually Reed shows up and sees Clay and our girl having a moment, hanging out together, and he's pissed. Basically, he does this big long speech that he's been going through the fine print between corporate and Hearts' contract. and he found out that Clay took out a loan on Hearts, which for some reason forfeits his ownership of Hearts, so he doesn't actually own any of it now. It is all corporates. Does that make sense? It literally doesn't matter. Just go with it. But Clay thinks that our girl was in on this big sneaky revelation, and he storms out. And our girl is angry at Reed, and she basically tells him like, go home, this is over kind of thing. And as she runs after Clay, she sees him making out with that bitchy girl that he broke up with last week. Are you still following along? I know this is a lot to take in. Thank God we have 14 minutes to solve this misunderstanding. Okay, so our girl catches up with Clay at his house, and she explains she wasn't part of this sneakiness, which, to be fair, like, Reed didn't do anything wrong. Clay fucked up, and Reed just found out about it. It doesn't matter. Our girl says, I had nothing to do with that. That was all Reed. It wasn't me. I saw you kissing that girl. And Clay says, no, she kissed me. And he goes back inside his house, and everybody's angry. And you know what? I am too. Thanks, Hallmark. So he stomped back inside his house, and she sits down on his porch and she starts going through his trash, including a box of high school stuff that he's throwing out. We have really sunk this low. And in the box, she finds a letter that he wrote to her with an engagement ring, obviously like proposing, but he didn't give the letter to her because she went away to the big city and he didn't want to like hold her back. And unrelated but extremely important, the shirt blouse thing that she wears throughout this movie is so fucking ugly. Who picked this shirt? Anyway, everybody's upset. She drives back to the big city. She goes back to her beautiful corporate office in her beautiful corporate outfit. Love it. And she starts looking at photos of her trip to Sycamore Springs on this giant ass iPad like an old person. We jump back to Clay, and he's complaining with his buddy, and the buddy tells him that our girl broke up with Reed, and he encourages Clay, like, you gotta go after her, you gotta go tell her how you feel. And Clay's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Finally, let this fucking film end. In the big city, during a presentation, our girl is giving about Hearts and her time in Sycamore Springs, whatever, and she basically says, like, all of you guys are wrong. Hearts should be like an organic farm-to-table vibe. It shouldn't be a cookie-cutter thing. It shouldn't be frozen food. Like, all of you guys are wrong, and this is the right way to go about it. And corporate agrees. Hell yeah, capitalism. So corporate's gonna let Hearts go back to the way it was, basically. So all of this was for nothing. Love that. And surprise, Clay shows up in the big city telling her how he feels. And do you know what he does? He proposes. Marriage. They literally haven't dated in 15 years. This is truly diabolical. We get perhaps my favorite and funniest 1 year later update. We see Hearts. It's full, it's busy, everybody's happy. They are married, they are pregnant, and guess what? She has the most ugly ass haircut I have ever seen. Girl, who did that to you? And with that horrible shot, this film is over. Thank God. Now, with all Hallmark reviews, I have 3 main categories: chemistry, plot, and overall enjoyment. So for chemistry, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. It's actually pretty good. The guy who plays Clay is like Hallmark famous. I never remember their names, but he's kind of like the male equivalent of Lacey Chabert. He's in loads of Hallmarks, so he knows what he's doing. And to be fair, the bad boyfriend, Reed, is also a Hallmark usual. I've seen him a couple of times, but he is typecast as the bad boyfriend because of that stupid jaw. For plot, I'm gonna say 4 out of 5. Technically, it makes sense. This sort of corporate takeover and like restaurant standards, like, okay, I'll let you have that. It technically makes sense. The bar is not high in the Hallmark Cinematic Universe. But for overall enjoyment, I'm gonna give this 3 out of 5. Nothing really crazy happens, which is kind of why I love Hallmark, when there's just like something so utterly stupid or like really low budget, like a mishap or something. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I love. We don't really get that in here. The only thing that I think was truly shocking was him proposing and that ugly ass country haircut. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to watch something else, how about this one? We go to Scotland with the worst ever accents. Truly horrible. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!